Right, it's right in the center. Yep. Fill in the center. Yep. Front, fill in there, guys. Fill in there. Fill in back. Fill in. Just right here. Right in the center.
Yeah, we do.
Fill in. Keep moving. Shoulder to shoulder, guys. Keep it this way. Fill in, shoulder to shoulder, shoulders and back, please. Shoulder to shoulder, guys. Keep pushing back.
You may want to pull some up.
Guys, we got room on this side. Make your way further down to your left.
It's amazing you get a certain age.
They brought
Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to speak plainly about the moment that we are in and the actual crisis, not the manufactured one, that we are facing in this city and as a state and as a country. If it sounds to you like I am alarmist, that is because I am ringing an alarm, one that I hope every person listening will heed, both here in Illinois and across the country. Over the weekend, we learned from the media that Donald Trump has been planning for quite a while now to deploy armed military personnel to the streets of Chicago. This is exactly the type of overreach that our country's founders warned against. And it's the reason that they established a federal system with a separation of powers built on checks and balances. What President Trump is doing is unprecedented and unwarranted. It is illegal. It is unconstitutional. It is un-American. No one from the White House or the executive branch has reached out to me or to the mayor. No one has reached out to our staffs. No effort has been made to coordinate or to ask for our assistance in identifying any actions that might be helpful to us. Local law enforcement has not been contacted. We have made no requests for federal intervention. None. We found out what Donald Trump was planning the same way that all of you did. We read a story in the Washington Post. If this was really about fighting crime and making the streets safe, what possible justification could the White House have for planning such an exceptional action without any conversations or consultations with the governor, the mayor, or the police? Let me answer that question. This is not about fighting crime. This is about Donald Trump searching for any justification to deploy the military in a blue city, in a blue state, to try and intimidate his political rivals. This is about the President of the United States and his complicit lackey, Stephen Miller, searching for ways to lay the groundwork to circumvent our democracy, militarize our cities, and end elections. There is no emergency in Chicago that calls for armed military intervention. There is no insurrection. There is no insurrection. Like every major American city in both blue and red states, we deal with crime in Chicago. Indeed, the violent crime rate is worse in red states and red cities. Here in Chicago, our civilian police force and elected leaders work every day to combat crime and to improve public safety. And it's working. Not one person here today will claim we have solved all crime in Chicago. nor can that be said of any major American metro area. But calling the military into a U.S. city to invade our streets and neighborhoods and disrupt the lives of everyday people is an extraordinary action, and it should require extraordinary justification. Look around you right now. Does this look like an emergency? Look at this. Go talk to the people of Chicago who are enjoying a gorgeous afternoon in this city. Ask the families buying ice cream on the Riverwalk. Go see the students who are at the beach after school. Talk to the workers that I just met taking the water taxi to get here. Find a family who's enjoying today sitting on their front porch and ask if they want their neighborhoods turned into a war zone by a wannabe dictator. Ask if they'd like to pass through a checkpoint with unidentified officers in masks while taking their kids to school. Crime is a reality we all face in this country. Public safety has been among our highest priorities since taking office. We have hired more police and given them more funding. We banned assault weapons, ghost guns, bump stocks, and high-capacity magazines. We invested historic amounts into community violence intervention programs. We listened to our local communities, to the people who live and work in the places that are most affected by crime, and asked them what they needed to help make their neighborhoods safer. Those strategies have been working. Crime is dropping in Chicago. Murders are down 32% compared to last year and nearly cut in half since 2021. Shootings are down 37% since last year and 57% from 4 years ago. Robberies are down 34% year over year. Burglaries down 21%. Motor vehicle thefts down 26%. So in case there was any doubt as to the motivation behind Trump's military occupations, take note. 13 of the top 20 cities in homicide rate have Republican governors. None of these cities is Chicago. 8 of the top 10 states with the highest homicide rates are led by Republicans. None of those states is Illinois. Memphis, Tennessee, Hattiesburg, Mississippi have higher crime rates than Chicago, and yet Donald Trump is sending troops here and not there? Ask yourself why. If Donald Trump was actually serious about fighting crime in cities like Chicago, he, along with his congressional Republicans, would not be cutting over $800 million in public safety and crime prevention grants nationally, including cutting $158 million in funding to Illinois for violence prevention programs that deploy trained outreach workers to de-escalate conflict on our streets. Cutting $71 million in law enforcement grants to Illinois, direct money for police departments through programs like Project Safe Neighborhoods, the state and local anti-terrorism training program, and the Rural Violent Crime Reduction Initiative. Cutting $137 million in child protection measures in Illinois that protect our kids against abuse and neglect. Trump is defunding the police. To the members of the press who are assembled here today and listening across the country, I am asking for your courage to tell it like it is. This is not a time to pretend here that there are two sides to this story. This is not a time to fall back into the reflexive crouch that I so often see, where the authoritarian creep by this administration is ignored in favor of some horse race piece on who will be helped politically by the president's actions. Donald Trump wants to use the military to occupy a U.S. city, punish his dissidents, and score political points. If this were happening in any other country, we would have no trouble calling it what it is, a dangerous power grab. Look at the people assembled before you today, behind me. This is a full cross-section of Chicago's leaders from the business world, the faith community, law enforcement, education, community organizations, and more. We sometimes disagree on how to effectively solve the many challenges that our state and our city face on a daily basis. But today we are standing here united, in public, in front of the cameras, unafraid to tell the president that his proposed actions will make our jobs harder and the lives of our residents worse. Earlier today in the Oval Office, Donald Trump looked at the assembled cameras and asked for me personally to say, "Mr. President, can you do us the honor of protecting our city?" Instead, I say, "Mr. President, do not come to Chicago." You are neither wanted here nor needed here. Your remarks about this effort over the last several weeks have betrayed a continuing slip in your mental faculties and are not fit for the auspicious office that you occupy. Most alarming, you seem to lack any appropriate concern as our commander-in-chief for the members of the military that you would so callously deploy as pawns in your ever more alarming grabs for power. As a governor, I've had to make the decision in the past to call up members of the National Guard into active service. And I think it's worth taking a moment to reflect on how seriously I take that responsibility and on the many things that I consider before asking these brave men and women to leave their homes and their communities to serve in any capacity for us. As I've said many times in the past, members of the National Guard are not trained to serve as law enforcement. They are trained for the battlefield, and they're good at it. They're not trained to arrest people and read them their Miranda rights. They did not sign up for the National Guard to fight crime. And when we call them into service, we are reaching into local communities and taking people who have jobs and families away from their neighborhoods and the people who rely upon them. It is insulting to their integrity and to the extraordinary sacrifices that they make to serve in the Guard, to use them as a political prop, where they could be put in situations where they will be at odds with their local communities, the ones that they seek to serve. I know Donald Trump doesn't care about the well-being of the members of our military, but I do. And so do all the people standing here. So let me speak to all Illinoisans and to all Chicagoans right now. Hopefully the president will reconsider this dangerous and misguided encroachment upon our state and our city's sovereignty. Hopefully rational voices, if there are any left inside the White House or the Pentagon, will prevail in the coming days. If not, we are going to face an unprecedented and difficult time ahead. But I know you, Chicago, and I know you are up to it. When you protest, do it peacefully. Be sure to continue Chicago's long tradition of nonviolent resistance. Remember that the members of the military and the National Guard who will be asked to walk these streets are, for the most part, here unwillingly. And remember that they can be court-martialed and their lives ruined if they resist deployment. Look to the members of the faith community standing behind me today for guidance on how to mobilize. To my fellow governors across the nation who would consider pulling your National Guards from their duties at home to come into my state against the wishes of its elected representatives and its people, you would be failing your constituents and your country. Cooperation and coordination between our states is vital to the fabric of our nation, and it benefits us all. Any action undercutting that and violating the sacred sovereignty of our state to cater to the ego of a dictator will be responded to. The state of Illinois is ready to stand against this military deployment with every peaceful tool we have. We will see the Trump administration in court. We will use every lever at our disposal to protect the people of Illinois and their rights. Finally, to the Trump administration officials who are complicit in this scheme, To the public servants who have forsaken their oath to the Constitution to serve the petty whims of an arrogant little man. To any federal official who would come to Chicago and try to incite my people into violence as a pretext for something darker and more dangerous, we are watching and we are taking names. This country has survived darker periods than the one that we're going through right now, and eventually the pendulum will swing back, maybe even next year. Donald Trump has already shown himself to have little regard for the many acolytes that he has encouraged to commit crimes on his behalf. You can delay justice for a time, but history shows you cannot prevent it from finding you eventually. If you hurt my people, nothing will stop me, not time or political circumstance, from making sure that you face justice under our constitutional rule of law. As Dr. King once said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Humbly, I would add, it doesn't bend on its own. History tells us we often have to apply force needed to make sure that the arc gets where it needs to go. This is one of those times. I look forward to taking your questions in a few minutes, but first, I'd like to hand over our podium to Mayor Brandon Johnson. Mayor.
Thank you, Governor. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to all of the state and local county leaders that are here with us today. So let's just get to the facts. Over the past 2 years, we have seen significant reductions in crime and violence. In the last year alone, we have seen more than a 30% decline in homicides. Let me say that again. We've reduced homicides in 1 year by almost a third. We've launched a robberies task force with the Chicago Police Department, effectively reducing robberies by almost 35%. We've worked closely with CPD to restructure the Detectives Bureau to bring the clearance rate up to 76%. It's the highest we've seen in more than a decade. We've worked with the Chicago Police Department and our Community Violence Intervention, CVI partners, to reduce shootings by almost 40%. Almost 40%. We've done that in 1 year. This is significant progress, and it's historic progress. We've had the safest April in the city of Chicago since 1962, more than 6 decades. And according to FBI data, Chicago is not in the top 25 of the most dangerous cities in the United States. And these facts are indisputable and widely acknowledged. Yet there are those who want to twist our words to make it seem as though we think that our job is finished. So let me be perfectly clear. Our work to make our city safer still continues. And while we have made progress, that doesn't mean that we will rest. In fact, we know that we have more work to do. And that work is what wakes me up every single day. It's what I think about before I go to bed. That is our focus every single day, and it will continue to be our top priority until Chicagoans feel safe in their neighborhoods, regardless of their zip codes. We cannot call ourselves a safe city until every Chicagoan in our beloved city feels safe, whether you live in Austin or North Lawndale or South Shore. Every single Chicagoan deserves to feel safe. There are those who might ask, if we have seen consistent historic reductions in crime and violence across our city over the past 2 years, and if we are not even in the top 25 most dangerous cities, then why are we now being targeted by the Trump administration for a military occupation? We are being targeted because of what and who we represent. Chicago was known as a working class city. We are the birthplace of the labor movement, and we will always be a union town. But we're also a diverse city, Black and Latina, Asian, Indigenous, and whites. We are a city with vibrant neighborhoods that represent every single nationality and every immigrant community from around the world, with more than 40 different language groups that are spoken in homes across Chicago. And we are a progressive city. We believe in investing in people. We believe in standing up for the most vulnerable among us. We believe that the solution to homelessness is not the National Guard, but it is housing. Building affordable housing across American cities should be our top priority. We believe that the solution to immigration is not to separate families and throw grandmothers into the back of vans with unmarked vans and masked individuals. The solution is comprehensive immigration reform that allows anyone who wishes to come to our city or our country. If they want to work, they should have a pathway to citizenship. We believe that the solution to poverty is not incarceration, it's investment. Instead of declaring war on the poor, we should remember Lyndon B. Johnson's vision for a greater society that declares war on poverty. And we believe that you don't solve crime by sending in the military. You work every day towards constitutional policing and rebuilding trust between law enforcement and residents. You solve crimes and bring closure to victims when we ensure that our detectives division have all of the tools that they need. You solve crimes and you bring closure to victims when we hold people accountable, of course, but we have to do it constitutionally. Due process, after all, is still a right for every single person in this country. That's how we reduce crime. So we are being targeted because of who we are as a city more than anything else. We are a shining example of what happens when working people stand together. The last thing that Chicagoans want is someone from the outside of our city who doesn't know our city try to dictate and tell us what our city needs. As the mayor of this city, I can tell you that Chicagoans are not calling for a military occupation. They are calling for the same thing that we've been calling for some time, and that's investment. What safe cities across America all have in common, they invest in people. And that's what we're doing in Chicago. We need the federal resources to make sure that we're building more affordable housing, expanding mental and behavioral health care, education, all of these things that could reduce crime and provide real community safety. Instead of spending hundreds of millions of dollars for a publicity stunt to invoke chaos and terror, the federal government should spend that money on proven solutions to crime and violence reduction. We cannot incarcerate our way out of violence. We've already tried that, and we've ended up with the largest prison population in the world without solving the problems of crime and violence. The addiction on jails and incarceration in this country, we have moved past that. It is racist, it is immoral, it is unholy, and it is not the way to drive violence down. We cannot return to the same failed strategies that got us here in the first place. Under the previous presidential administration, we requested more federal resources to address gun violence in our city. We continue to make that same call. We have made significant progress on our own, but there is so much more that we can do if we had real support from the federal government. Our communities need more federal resources for public safety. There's no question about that. But unsolicited, unwarranted military takeover is not needed. Our message is simple. Listen to what our people are actually calling for. We're calling for investments, resources. This stunt that this president is attempting to execute is not real. It doesn't help drive us towards a more safe, affordable big city. And so, in closing, we have some very simple demands. We are calling on the Trump administration to release the $800 million for violence prevention funds that he stole back in April. We are calling for more resources to stop the endless flow of guns into our city. And we are calling for transformational investments into affordable housing and community safety. I'm proud to stand with all of the partners that are here today, as well as mayors and governors across this country. We will defend our democracy. We will protect our humanity. We will stand up for the interests of working people. And so that's the state, local government, the federal delegation that are all here committed, standing firm in our values, standing up for the greatest freaking city in the world, the city of Chicago. Thank you very much. And with that, please welcome our Attorney General, Mr. Kwame Raoul.
Afternoon. No, I started my tenure as Attorney General halfway through President Trump's first term. And since then, we and other state and local law enforcement partners have done tremendous work fighting crime in partnership with federal law enforcement partners. Throughout my tenure, and now as Attorney General, I've collaborated with federal law enforcement partners, including the FBI, the DEA, ATF, Secret Service, HSI, and others to investigate and prosecute criminal activity in Illinois. And working together, we have successfully investigated and prosecuted gun crimes, drug trafficking, organized retail crime, internet crimes against children, and other crime. We have a great law enforcement leaders in Chicago and throughout in Illinois, including a great Chicago police superintendent, a great state police director, and a great sheriff. We have also had great special agents in charge and agents at large assigned to Chicago from the federal government. Together, we have embraced a one-team collaborative approach to fighting crime. I say this to emphasize that I'm not and have never been opposed to collaborative help from well-trained federal law enforcement agents. Were the president serious about addressing crime or criminal threats in Chicago, he would dedicate more resources to collaborative work that we already engage in with these federal agencies. What the president is instead doing is in no way embracing a serious effort to reduce crime. Deploying American military personnel who are not trained in civilian law enforcement tactics against American citizens does not promote public safety in our cities. Last week, we filed a lawsuit against the Department of Justice for unlawfully placing conditions on Victims of Crime Act grants. If the president and his administration were at all serious about crime, he would not place unlawful conditions on funds that help states support critical services for victims of crime, including sexual assault, child abuse, domestic violence, human trafficking, and other victims of crime. If the president and his administration were concerned about crime, he would not be cutting millions of dollars from proven community violence interruption programs. If the president and his administration were at all serious about addressing crime, the president would be communicating with the governor and Illinois law enforcement leaders. Instead, the president's plan is purely performative. Not only has the president not asked us whether federal intervention is needed, we have made no requests for the type of federal intervention we have seen imposed in Los Angeles or Washington, D.C. The apparent plans to move forward regardless of our unanimous opposition is an offense to the sovereignty of our state and the sovereignty of states at large. It is a dangerous step towards authoritarianism that puts our communities at risk. The Posse Comitatus Act limits federal government's ability to use military for domestic law enforcement. None of the prerequisites for National Guard deployment exist here. There is no emergency in the state of Illinois that requires the use of National Guard. There's no foreign invasion. There's no rebellion. My office has filed close to 36 lawsuits fighting the unlawful overreach of the Trump administration. And we're not afraid to do it again. And this is an administration that frequently disregards our Constitution and federal law. But notwithstanding all of these lawsuits and all of these prior federal overreach, it's possible that deploying members of the U.S. military against Americans could be the most egregious violation yet. It is immoral and it is dangerous. And we will use every legal tool to fight any unlawful deployment of the military against our American citizens in the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois. At this point, I would like to introduce our great U.S. Senator, Senator Tammy Duckworth.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Oh, it is afternoon.
You made it.
I made it. Good afternoon, everyone. To echo our governor, thank you for being here. Though the circumstances that Trump is seeking to create are both deeply unfortunate and obviously unnecessary. Donald Trump never had the courage himself to raise his right hand and serve his country in uniform. But let me just say from personal experience, and that consists of 23 years in the military, 17 of which proudly as a member of the Illinois National Guard, that the men and women who are brave enough to wear this country's flag on their shoulder are doing so to defend our nation's rights and freedoms, not to protect a tin pot dictator's thin skin or to police their own neighbors. It's not what they signed up for, and it's certainly not what their training is focused on. I don't want to repeat too much of what Governor Pritzker had just laid out, so let me just say that it should come as no surprise that Donald Trump is once again attacking Chicago. He has for a long time, and he will probably keep on doing it for years to come. It is because he is afraid of us. But his attacks don't do anything to change the reality that he has a long pattern of politicizing and misusing our nation's military for his own partisan gain and to crush dissent, and that is beyond outrageous. I went to war. I was federalized as a member of the National Guard to defend America's freedoms. So you better believe that I'm going to speak out when he's doing his damnedest to keep other Americans from speaking out, from exercising their First Amendment rights. And let me say it again, one of the most patriotic things you can do in this nation isn't necessarily serving in uniform. It is standing up and exercising your First Amendment rights and speaking truth to power. We know that Trump's actions are not about law and order. Give me a break. We know this for 1,001 reasons, but I will give you one. Because Trump is flagrantly, even today, refusing to coordinate with state and local officials. Just this morning, I was in touch with the National Guard officials, and they confirmed to me that he has not reached out to them. And if he really cared about health and safety, he wouldn't have cut millions of dollars in gun violence prevention funding just weeks ago. Instead, this is just another sad, desperate attempt by a small man to distract the American people from the price spikes his own policies are still causing and the countless personal scandals he's trying to sweep under the rug and hope that we don't notice. We should not get distracted, but he also should not be forcing our Guardsmen and women to have to be away from their loved ones, forcing them to take time off from their full-time jobs simply to stroke his own ego. And let me be clear, our military will feel the cost of this PR stunt as it takes resources and focus away from the real missions they need to train for. What they should be doing is preparing for air assault missions. They should be preparing for convoy operations. They should be training to help us in the event of a flood or a tornado and other natural disasters. They should be training to fight, to take the fight to the enemies abroad, not to bring the fight to neighbors here at home. He is also inflicting reputational damage on our nation's military. which is supposed to be nonpartisan. He is taking it and he is deploying our troops on the streets of our nation's communities and hurting the readiness of the greatest fighting force on the face of the earth. Frankly, all this would be embarrassing if it weren't so devastating for those involved and so terrifying for the future and the security of our nation. Forcing the military uninvited into Chicago to intimidate Americans in their own neighborhoods does not make our nation stronger. It simply distracts our service members from executing their core mission of keeping Americans safe from the real adversaries who wish to do us harm. It's yet another unwarranted, unwanted, and unjust move straight out of the authoritarian's playbook that will only undermine our military's readiness and ultimately weaken our national security. Donald Trump should be worried about and should be focused on standing up to Vladimir Putin. Instead, he rolls out the red carpet for him. Donald Trump should be supporting Ukraine in its fight against Russia, and yet he does nothing of the sort. Donald Trump should be fighting the Houthis rebels, and yet he has not been able to do that, spending millions of dollars to ineffectively try to stop them from stopping shipping in the Red Sea. Maybe if Donald Trump hadn't dodged a draft so many times, and by the way, that's 5 times that he dodged a draft when his nation called and he decided, ouch, my bone spurs are hurting, he would have actually learned something about keeping our country strong. But that is obviously too much to expect from Cadet Bone Spurs. With that, I'll hand it over to Derek Douglas of the Civic Committee. Thank you. Oh, actually, I'm supposed to hand it over to Senator Durbin, our great senior senator from Illinois, Dick Durbin.
Thank you, Tammy. It's an honor to be here today. Make no mistake, the threat of federal troops to Chicago is not a serious effort to reduce crime in the neighborhoods of this city or our state. If it were a serious effort, it would be a coordinated effort with the mayor, the governor, law enforcement officials at all levels. It is not. The notion that we are engaging the National Guard in law enforcement has been described by each of the previous speakers, and I won't get into detail. But the men and women of the National Guard, I am proud to say, have served our nation and our country honorably over and over again. Proof positive, Senator Tammy Duckworth. She deserves a round of applause. When it comes to law enforcement, that is not the job of the National Guard, and that's not what they're trained for. And this president is making a point of cherry-picking blue cities and blue states on his crime campaign. As the mayor and the governor and others have said repeatedly, if you're looking for the worst of the worst, Chicago is not the first stop at all. There are so many other communities, even red communities, if you allow me to describe them as such, where there is much more needed. The real reason for Trump's action is clear. He is in the process of accelerating mass deportation. If you don't believe it is alive and well, speak to your friends in Little Village and Pilsen, as I have. The people who run the restaurants and the shops, the churches, and they'll tell you what's happened with the fear that is in this community today. And this is something that Donald Trump wants to build on. The goal to deport 3,000 immigrants a day. They've stated it publicly. That's what they're setting out to do. And sadly, they're marching toward that goal. It is one thing for Trump to give speeches as he has and to warn us of immigrants that are rapists and terrorists and murderers and criminally insane. But the reality is this. Of those who have been deported, fewer than 1 out of 10 have any criminal record whatsoever. Fewer than 1 out of 10. 90% of the people facing deportation have been doing their best to be good citizens, paying their taxes, raising their kids, going to the same churches we attend, and they expect us to stand up for them, and we should today. I think it's imperative that we do. There's a reason that our Constitution, laws, and history hold back presidents from invading cities and states. This is an act of political theater by Donald Trump, and sadly, we have to take it extremely seriously. My friends, don't walk away and say this is just another political issue. This is how democracies die. when people don't stand up and speak up for the basic constitutional rights and freedoms which are part of us in this country. It's time for us to stand up and make sure we state our position under the First Amendment by assembly and gathering, and I've been to many of them. I want to salute the leaders for always making a point of saying they should be peaceful and nonviolent. That's the starting point. The second part of it is the fact that in our mid-year election, which we're facing in a year and a few months, fewer than half the voters who are eligible actually turn up. That's a job for all of us to change. They can talk about reapportionment and redistricting. We need to register and make sure our numbers turn up in a way that makes a serious difference in the governorship of this country. I am proud to serve you in the Senate, but we have work to do in the remaining 16 months before this election. It is my honor to introduce Derek Douglas. He is president of the Civic Committee and president of the Commercial Club. Mr. Douglas.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Chicago has a long and storied history of tackling its challenges by working together across the public, private, and civic sectors to develop and implement solutions. As you've heard today, public safety is no different. Deploying federal troops or federalizing the National Guard without engaging state and local government, business, philanthropic, and community leaders, the ones who understand Chicago's needs and are on the ground working daily to make our city safer, is unprecedented and unwarranted. The Civic Committee formed a public safety task force in 2022, and when we formed that task force, we reached out to the organizations and the leaders who were working in the public safety space for so many years, and we committed to standing by them in the good times and the bad to try to make this city as safe as possible, and to identify ways for the business community to contribute to creating a safer Chicago for all, with an emphasis on gun violence reduction. Through those efforts, we work closely with the city, the county, and the state, CPD, Chicago's criminal justice system and leaders, philanthropy, and community-based violence intervention organizations in what we call a one-table approach. And as many of the previous speakers have mentioned, we are making incredible progress on reducing gun violence in our city, even though we have a ways to go. That said, we do believe there is a critical role for federal support that could benefit our city. And we would welcome those to help us be true partners from the federal government in this work. But to be helpful, it needs to be coordinated and integrated with our one-table approach efforts on the ground, not isolated and militarized from afar. For example, if the Trump administration wants to help, it can start by restoring funding for community violence intervention organizations working in our communities. You can work with our law enforcement professionals to stop the flow of illegal guns across state lines into Chicago. We can provide resources to take gun cases federal, and we can work with law enforcement entities to stop the deadly flow of fentanyl into our streets. So there are things that could be done, but none of those, to the best of our knowledge, have been put on the table. We have made progress through these coordinated, cross-sectoral efforts of the state, city, county, business, philanthropic, and civic leaders, and community-based violence intervention groups, and most importantly, law enforcement, local law enforcement. Thanks to these partnerships, Chicago has built one of the most robust community violence intervention sectors in the entire country, something we'd like to make a permanent feature of our public safety strategy to help us achieve our goal of making Chicago the safest big city in America. The federal government should look to engage with stakeholders to assess where help is truly needed, instead of cutting funding to this critical work or taking unilateral action that is missing local context. I represent the business community here today, and we stand by the governor, the mayor, our county president, our Illinois federal delegation, Superintendent Snelling, Attorney General Raoul, all of our other partners in this work, and the city that we love to insist that any offer of federal support be closely coordinated and integrated with our one-table approach to reduce gun violence and its impact on our communities. What we need is aligned action. That's what we have going on in Chicago. What we don't need are disruptions to our economy and our businesses. Active duty military patrolling the streets of our city sends the wrong message and risks slowing our economy and disrupting the progress we've made together. It will impact businesses' bottom lines and ability to operate efficiently. It will impact tourism and employees getting to their jobs. It will impact morale. The kind of sweeping, uncoordinated, indiscriminate action being threatened sets a dangerous precedent, and we stand with our city and all Chicagoans to encourage the administration to productively engage with us to help us continue to make progress on this critical issue. Now with that, I would like to introduce Paco Amador, who is the pastor of New Life Church and the board president of New Life Centers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As a young college kid, I came to Chicago to study downtown. And I remember as a hungry college student, got in a car with a bunch of people and we drove right into Little Village, Mexican immigrant neighborhood in the city of Chicago. There is an arch at the entrance of the neighborhood. It is, I love this arch. It's a symbol of what Chicago stands for. It's a welcoming doors for migrants and Spanish-speaking people from all over the Midwest of the United States. I go to that arch every single week as a local minister to pray at those doors. I love the fact that it's an arch, but it has no doors. The doors are never closed. There's no doors. For a decade, I was a Chicago public school teacher, and right across the street from our church, for the last two decades, I have been a pastor in this multilingual, multicultural community. I love being a pastor there. Through New Life Centers, we have been able to see the strength and beauty of a city that collaborates. Not just faith initiatives, elected officials, business, community initiatives, all of us together. From last year to now, there has been an 80% decrease in shootings and homicides in our community. And that is a powerful thing that no one can claim that they have done it. We have all done it together. Just yesterday, I was part of our congregation, and many other congregations in Little Village and North Lawndale closed down their services to be able to join in the historic Route 66 in Ogden Avenue. It never closes except yesterday. And it was a beautiful thing to see North Lawndale, South Lawndale coming together. Several years ago, our local alderman who's here, Mike Rodriguez, came over to my house. He knocked on the door and he said, "Hey, Pastor, come with me. Let's go and say hi to neighbors." I've never experienced that. I loved it. We walked in to one side of the street and we met. I didn't even know that many neighbors. I've been living there for 30 years. I didn't know so many of those neighbors. We had some great conversations. Then we went to the other side. We met other neighbors that I've never seen. We've lived across the street from each other. And we went to the other side. After 3 days of visiting and neighbors and having conversations, we ended up coming together with an idea for an abandoned lot right in the corner of those streets. Right now, if you go, there is a beautiful corner garden where there used to be chaos. The ingredients of neighborhood and city transformation, it's right there. Elected officials, faith community, business, neighbors, community organizations, all coming together to work together. I guess what I'm trying to say now is that Chicago, together with all these friends and community neighbors and collaborators, is that Chicago is a growing and thriving city, which under our watch will, with community, faith, local government, state collaboration, will continue to keep its doors open to all those who seek a thriving city. I love living in the city of Chicago contrary to negative narratives. Every time I ask my kids, my wife and I have eight children. Every single one of them have been born in the city of Chicago. Every time I ask my kids, hey, do you want to ride to school? Most of my kids say, Dad, I'd rather go biking in the city. I ask them why. They say, because I love this city. Today, I just want to say that we live in a thriving city. And we will continue to work together to see this city thriving even more. I want to welcome Reverend Sierra Bates Chamberlain, Executive Director of Live Free Illinois. Thank you. Again, God bless.
Good afternoon. I am Reverend Sierra Bates Chamberlain. I'm the Executive Director of Live Free Illinois, where we organize over 120 congregations across the state, working at the intersection of gun violence and incarceration. What we are witnessing today is devastating. The President of the United States has chosen to target Black and brown communities already traumatized by state-sanctioned violence and white supremacy. This is not just politics. This is state-sanctioned violence. This is an authoritarian stunt. This is a declaration of war on our people. Two things can be true at the same time. Yes, gun violence has disproportionately impacted Black and brown communities. And yet, across the country, we are seeing historically low numbers in homicides and shootings. That progress is not an accident. It's the work of thousands of mothers, of fathers, of pastors, of organizers, street outreach workers, and young people who wake up every day to build public safety from the ground up. But instead of listening to us, this administration listens to a handful of Judas voices willing to sell out their own community. That is white supremacy, propping up a few to betray the many. And let's tell the truth. There are cities in Missouri, Louisiana, Mississippi with higher homicide rates than Chicago, yet they were not targeted. Why? Because this is not about saving lives. It's about punishing Illinois leadership, punishing Black and brown resistance, and punishing Black hope. Chicago and people across Illinois, we don't need soldiers in our streets. We need resources in our schools. We don't need tanks in our neighborhoods. We need jobs, housing, and health care. We don't need an army to occupy us. We need our tax dollars invested in us. If the president truly cared about violence, he would invest in community-based solutions. If he cared about safety, he would hold gun manufacturers accountable. But instead, he has chosen to weaponize the military against Black and brown lives, and that ain't right. Illinois, we will not be fooled. We will not be divided. This is a modern-day attack to roll back our civil and human rights. But God has not given us the spirit of fear. And though the kingdom of heaven suffered violence, the violent will take it by force. So hear me. We will not bow. We will not break. We will not bow down. We will not stand. We will resist. We will stand. And we will fight for our freedom and our communities, our rights by faith, courage, and collective power. And by the way, release the Epstein files. And with that being said, I introduce Father Michael Flager.
Like everyone else has stated clearly, Chicago's not in a state of emergency. We all reject any deployment of National Guard on Chicago streets. We do not need nor want a militarization of Chicago or Illinois, which is only going to induce fear, chaos, and disturb the progress we are presently making to decrease violence. The state of emergency is in America, not Chicago, and is birthed from this president and his administration. Dr. King said he could not raise his voice against the violence of the oppressed. without having first spoken clearly to the greater purveyor of violence, his own country. And those are my words to you, Mr. Trump. Before you dare speak about any violence in Chicago, look into your mirror and address the violence coming from the White House. The violence of cutting SNAP, which will cut $2.4 million in food access, put 360,000 Illinoisans at risk by taking food off their tables. Address the violence of cutting Medicare and Medicaid by $500 million, reducing access to doctors, and threatening the closure of hospitals and nursing home facilities throughout the state of Illinois, literally putting Americans in life and death situations. Some Americans will die because of your Medicaid cuts. Address the violence of cutting $158 million for violence prevention in Illinois. And yes, as others have stated, the $800 million anti-violence grants nationwide. And address the violence of refusing to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, refusing to have universal background checks as well as red flag laws, and making America the gun capital of the world due to its gun ownership and sales. And while you're at it, Mr. Trump, stop the gun flow into our state from your Republican state of Indiana. Yes, Mr. Trump, rather than exploit our men and women in uniform for your own political theater, look into the mirror and address the acts of violence that you have ordered from your golden Oval Office, creating violence and chaos throughout this country. Take the wasted money in sending the National Guard and the wasted money used on threatening commercials by your Homeland Security Secretary, and use it on real violence and prevention programs that will bring peace. The only one we have to be concerned about is violence is you, Mr. President. Send the National Guard to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And now I'll bring back our governor for questions, Governor J.B. Pritzker.
Happy to take any questions from members of the media. Mary Ann. Well, that's going to be litigated. Does Donald Trump have the legal authority? It's unconstitutional. It's against the law. We talked about posse comitatus. There is no reason why American military can be or should be in American cities when there is not an insurrection. They are required, members of the Illinois National Guard are members of the military. And when they are called up according to Title 10 by the President of the United States, they are required to follow orders, just as they are when the governor calls them up under Title 32. Well, that's got to be determined. I exactly agree with the point that you're making. Yes. I'm sorry. Maybe I can ask the Attorney General to talk about his work.
We don't know exactly the exact circumstances in which the deployment would take place. So a preemptive lawsuit couldn't be targeted to a specific targeting of the military. So we don't anticipate that, but we don't rule it out. I don't have a comment on that right now. Thank you. No comment on that right now, Isabel.
Yeah, thank you for that question. The way we address the fear is that we stand firm together. That's why you have this full display today, that we are going to have the backs of working people across this city, and that any attempt to intimidate our people from being able to live their lives That is the quintessential example of terrorism, and we will not bend, break, or bow to that type of tyranny. So we're going to continue to make sure that the people of Chicago know their rights, and business, philanthropic, labor, elected leaders, faith leaders. We're all going to put our arms around every single resident of this city to ensure that our way of life is not disrupted.
Shia. Well, I think they'll hear exactly what I said today about whether we want them in the city of Chicago. We do not want troops on the streets of the city of Chicago. Let me be clear. And if he calls me, I will tell him that directly. It simply means that people who are breaking the law, who are acting in unconstitutional fashion, will be held accountable, must be held accountable. Yes. Look, every single person that is the victim of violence in any city across the entire United States is worthy of our sympathy and also worthy of having law enforcement go after the perpetrators. That is what we do in the city of Chicago. That is what we do in the state of Illinois. We will not give up on that. And we will stand up for the people of the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago by following the law.
Thank you. I got you. I can speak for Chicagoans. Look, Chicagoans are not asking for a militarized force to occupy our city. They're not asking for that. I can tell you what Chicagoans are asking for. They want us to build more affordable housing. They want us to invest more in young people. They want us to ensure that we're creating mental and behavioral health care services. And do you know how I know that's what they want? It's because that's what's working. There's a 32% reduction in homicides. That's not an easy feat to accomplish. And we're doing that collectively. Chicagoans, here's what Chicagoans want. We want a reimbursement from our tax dollars that we send to the federal government, to send it right back to the city of Chicago to ensure that we build safe and affordable communities. That's exactly what they want. Go ahead.
Why the fake backdrop for public safety when not equal? Why not equal? Why not being the equal of violence and the crime is that? Can you answer that?
Look, as we said before, protecting our First Amendment is the top priority of our democracy. And so, of course, we want people to raise and elevate their voices, but they have to do it in a very peaceful way. Let me be very clear here. The Trump administration, they are trying to incite and provoke violence. And so that's why you're seeing a very coordinated, disciplined response in this moment. Look, there's no secret that the city of Chicago has been on the front line fighting for justice, not just for Chicago, but for folks across this country. This is the city that said, keep hope alive. This is the city that birthed, yes, we can. And so we know how to resist, we know how to raise our voices, we know how to do that in a constitutional way, and that's what we're calling for. Thank you.
There is not an emergency in the city of Chicago. There is nothing that calls for having troops on the streets of the city of Chicago. We have crime like other cities do. But let's be clear, we are actually in better shape than the 30 biggest cities across the United States. We're in better shape on average, and it is important to recognize that the President of the United States is doing this for theatrics. This is not because we've asked for it. It is not because there is some justice that he is going to seek. It is because he wants to create chaos. That is all this is about. I'm sorry, I need to call it on somebody new. Yeah. Well, one thing that we're trying to make clear to the entire United States is that this is a great city. Look at how beautiful this city is. This city is moving in the right direction on crime. That we have been, in fact, over the last 4 years, we have seen homicides drop in half. And that is something that the President of the United States should pay attention to. I know he doesn't read. I know he doesn't listen to very many people, but I know he watches television. And so perhaps if somebody from Fox News or from Newsmax is here, they'll cover the fact that Chicago is in much better shape as a result of the work that we are doing to prevent crime, to interrupt crime, to reduce crime, to increase the number of police. Our state police are up during my time in office. I want the president to understand that we do not want troops on the ground in the city of Chicago. Neither do the people of Chicago or the people of the state. Yes, ma'am. Well, the Chicago Police Department has its job to do. The troops, if they are federalized, will be limited by what federal troops can do. So those are the rules. They're not supposed to be doing crime fighting. They're not supposed to be involved in anything other than what federal troops are supposed to do. They can guard federal buildings. They can do the work of, as called upon to, perhaps sit outside the city of Chicago, but not to fight crime in the city of Chicago. That is not what they're supposed to be doing. Yes, Jason, sorry.
So the police department is under the direction of my leadership, my superintendent, Superintendent Snelling. We have our own autonomy in terms of how we protect this city. As the governor has articulated, federal troops are not police officers. They don't have that authority or that power. So the very thing in which the president is claiming he wants them to do, they don't have the authority to do that. Look, here's the other thing that's important. Our local law enforcement cooperates with federal agents on a host of things, one of which is getting illegal guns off the streets of Chicago. Just a couple of weeks ago, we seized over 150 guns that were trafficked in from Mississippi and Indiana. That's the type of coordination that we have to continue to do to drive safe and affordable neighborhoods. Thank you all very much.
Sure. I'm sorry. I know you were looking to ask a question. If we needed them to call in troops or we needed to have the National Guard federalized, we would call them. We are not calling them. We do not need that.
This is going to be the last question.
Well, look, we're going to use every single tool at our disposal. Here's the most important thing to note today, is that you have complete alignment across the entire city of Chicago, that the city of Chicago firmly rejects militarized forces occupying our city. It is uncoordinated, uncalled for, and unsound. The best way to build safe and affordable communities, not just in Chicago but across this country, is to invest in them. The safest cities in America invest in people, and that's exactly what we're doing. Thank you all very much. Have a great day.